Yeah, so let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, all the esteemed panelists who joined us at a very short notice. But I think the occasion was so important that you felt that, yes, let's just join and share whatever we can in terms of experience and knowledge on this very important day, which is the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi and also Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri, two very important people who had dreams for rural India, who had dreams for holistic development of India, and who had dreams for how India should go ahead with employment, skill development, entrepreneurship, for creating an economy which is much more balanced. And in the light of the fact that we had the recent new education policy, which was launched last year, that is popularly known as NEP 2020, and most of us remember, and we have also studied the policy, which has a very strong Gandhian influence. If you read about how the dreams of Mahatma Gandhi, which were dreamt several decades ago, which we are trying to realize now, obviously shows that this man was way ahead of his time. And also few thoughts and ideas and also dreams of Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri, perhaps for rural development, were also included in this policy. So we go ahead today in discussing these thoughts, these ideas, and convert them into action points by talking to the eminent panelists who are representing different aspects of education to employability and employment, the entire spectrum, the journey which every child traverses in India. So let's get started by introducing the panelists. I would like to first introduce all of you. I hope our audience is joining on YouTube live now. I would extend a very warm welcome to all the people who have shown a lot of interest in this webinar, and welcome to this session. I hope you get to learn important things from this session and also interact by asking questions as the session is going on. So we have with us Mr. Sharda Gautam, who's the Zonal Head North at Tata Trust. If you have been following him on LinkedIn, you will see that he regularly updates about various initiatives from an important initiative from Tata Trust called Antaran, which is to do with crafts and transforming crafts and rural economy, rural livelihood through their crafts initiatives. And he's going to share his views on how enabling livelihoods through appropriate skilling in crafts is very important at this point in time. Perhaps he can also tell us a bit about the difference between handicrafts and mechanized crafts and how Antran is transforming lives in the rural sector. Then we have with us Dr. Swapna Mishra. For all of you who have been following Textile Sector Skill Council, she's not a new name. She's an expert and highly academic also in her accomplishments, but balanced very well with industry experience. She has been playing a very important role in curriculum development in the textile sector through the Sector Skill Council as the director of the Textile Sector Skill Council, and she has a huge experience both from the textile and handloom sector. So welcome, Dr. Swapna. We want to hear more from you about the industry perspective, about the Sector Skill Council, and how you are trying to bridge the gap between skills and education, particularly in the backdrop of the fact that the Ministry of Skill Development and the Ministry of Education are going to work very closely now that they are put together, and then they have a common goal, or rather they share many of the goals. Then we have with us Dr. Vinay Swaroop Mehrotra. For all of you who are connected with school level vocational education and vocationalization of schools, Dr. Mehrotra is a very familiar person, I'm sure. He's the head of Curriculum Development and Evaluation Center at PSS CIV Bhopal. He's also a regular in many events and shares his experience, his views on vocationalization of school education. He has played a very important role in NSQF development, and also he's an author and written quite a lot. And today we would like to hear from him about how the idea of head, hand, and heart from Mahatma Gandhi and his idea of Nai Talim, integrates with the new education policy. And then we have with us Ms. Jonali Saikia, who is the founder of HIA Social Enterprise and co-founder of Handcrafted Foundation. Jonali is here to represent the grassroots level experience of working with many women who are into handlooms and handicrafts from Assam particularly. She has been taking up many initiatives and skilling and upskilling for these women and trying to connect them, with the larger ecosystem for enabling livelihoods for the people who are connected with handlooms. So with this, I would not like to take more time, but get started by requesting Mr. Sharda Gautam to share his views. We have about 8 minutes for each speaker. And after that, we will collect their views. And the next part of the webinar, we are going to perhaps request them to give from few action points that can be the takeaway from this very important webinar. So over to you, Mr. Sharda Gautam.
Good morning, everyone. As Ms. Madhuri mentioned, I think I'll briefly touch upon the issues which pertain to craft-based livelihoods. I'll start off by saying that the efforts that are required for the craft sector should not get limited towards creating a survival hood for the artisans, but it should actually look at the livelihood for the artisans. And when we say the livelihood, it should move beyond the daily wages which an unskilled person is able to get, because the kind of creative and aspirational work which artisans tend to do is something which must be rewarded in much better way. Having said that, that may be a larger goal that all of us may carry, but what is very important to understand is the changing environment that has happened in the craft sector. If we look back about 100 years back, when industrialization was not so much forthcoming in India, primarily buyers of the artisans, the patrons of the artisans were all local. Their products were being sold in the local markets. They knew the language of the buyers. Taste and preferences of the buyers were also very much known to the artisans. And because of that, whatever skill sets the artisans then were able to grasp from their parents and grandparents were more than sufficient for them to deal with the requirements of the markets. But in last 55, 70 years post-independence, the way industrialization has come in and overall global markets have evolved, buyers for handmade products have moved beyond their local geographies. Now, when buyers move beyond their local geographies, and artisans who are mostly situated in remote parts of the country and have had very limited education and exposure, because the kind of education system which we had till now and which hopefully the new education policy would tend to disrupt, that education provided same education to us, to a child of a carpenter, to a child of a weaver, to a child who aspires to become an engineer. So therefore, it was not creating that differentiated knowledge base for the artisans to deal in the changing market environment. And things have changed not just because the markets have moved beyond the geographies. With markets moving beyond the geographies, the language of transaction has moved. So let's say if there were artisans from Assam, they used to communicate in Assamese or in Bodo. Now when markets are in Delhi or in Bombay or in Paris, it essentially is in a language which is not known to them. And with language, there is a natural inhibition that comes in for anyone to transact, and that inhibition results into apparent lack of professionalism, which buyers feel that artisans do not respond in time, they shy away. Those inhibitions start coming in. So what is very important if we want to transcend beyond survivalhood to livelihood is to make sure that we provide that right education and exposure, which bridges this gap that has come in between the earlier local markets and the new markets that can provide business and livelihood to the artisans. So therefore, education is required in certain areas. Now, what could those areas be? One, when business moves beyond your local geographies, what happens is you need to start understanding certain things like supply chain, working capital, which earlier you didn't have to, because your buyers were all local. You knew aapne paisa diya, and then after certain days you would receive back your money. The supply chain has become elongated. The raw material that comes into the artisans comes from distant sources. The spinning, ginning, and everything that happens doesn't happen locally within the villages. Earlier, they were all using local fibers, local dyes. So the supply chain related issues is something which they have to pick up. Second very important area, which is again related to business, which they have to pick up is how do you interact with buyers who are not based in your geographies. Now, buyers who are not based in your geographies, you might have to present your products in such a manner so that it appears appealing to them, because they are not able to get a tacit feeling of the product because the product is not there. So how do you do right set of photography? How do you do right costing, taking into consideration the transportation cost, logistical issues, taxes, and several other things which would come into picture. So if we combine all of these, I think these all come into barefoot business management. This is which is very much required for any artisan who aspires to be a business weaver or a business craft person must learn. Second area which is very, very important for them to learn is how do you deal, how do you use the information and communication technology, which has become like say WhatsApp and Instagram are like new kabooters of this digital era. So if you are not exposed to, even though the smartphone costs have gone down and access has also become quite improved with multiple players coming into this space, how do you make sure that artisans actually pick up the right skills for communicating on WhatsApp? How do you make sure that they start writing right set of messages which are required when you have to communicate with the buyer, when you have to post it on Instagram? How do you use right set of hashtags, and several other things which are required. Third, and the most important area for the artisans to pick up, apart from business management and use of ICT tools, is the science of doing it. Till now, whatever they have picked up from their parents and grandparents has been the art side of it. So let's say, for example, if there are weavers who are into ikat weaving, they know how many yarns have to be put up in one kera. But the moment you change the type of the fiber or the count of the fiber, they become clueless. Why? Because they have picked this as an art from their parents. Now, a buyer sitting in Paris may not need the same count of fiber. They may need a different thickness of the fabric, which they are looking at, different GSM of the fabric. And therefore, it is important that apart from picking up the art from their parents and grandparents, the science side of it is also taught to the artisans. If we are able to bridge these three education and exposure gaps and build a direct connect of the artisans with B2B and B2C buyers, I think we would come to a point wherein we'll take the artisans from a level of survivalhood to livelihood. And that's what briefly we have been trying to do through Antaran, which is functional in 6 weaving clusters across the country in the first phase. We're working in Venkatgiri in Andhra Pradesh, in Maniaband and Gopalpur cluster in Odisha, Kamrup and Nalbari in Assam, and Dimapur and Phek district in Nagaland. So the intent has been to identify the creative and aspirational artisans, because normally we tend to assume that artisans are monoliths, but they're not. You would broadly categorize them in three buckets. One could be the ones who actually use the term that Madhuri used, head, heart, and hand together, and are the most creative and aspirational ones. We can call them as kalakars. There's another category of karigars who mostly use their head, may not be so much involved in the creative side, but know the technical side very strong of any new fabric that has to be woven. Let's call them karigar. And third categories of the mazdoors. If we are able to provide this education and exposure and the right market connect, the direct market connect to the karigars and kalakars, we will make sure that we would have gotten true custodians of the craft form, and eventually the mazdoor ones would also try and emulate them. That's all I think briefly I wanted to put forward, Madhuri. If there are any specific questions, I'll love to answer later on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for precisely putting up the points within the stipulated time we have for every speaker. That's really wonderful. And we will come back to you as the second part of this webinar is going to be around few action points and questions. Let's move ahead now after Mr. Sharda Gautam to Dr. Swapnam Mishra, who will be talking from the textile point of view. I would also like you to reflect, Dr. Mishra, on the idea of head, heart, and hand that we want to carry forward throughout these discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can you confirm if my voice is audible?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thank you. So we at Textile Sector Skill Council deal with two sectors. One is the textile mill sector, which provides wage employment, and the other is the handloom sector, which provides wage as well as self-employment. So for the mill sector, we have concentrated mostly on training of school dropouts to give them immediate jobs through wage employment. Whereas for the handloom sector, as Mr. Gautam has already pointed out, that the approach has to be a little different. So we have a few unique initiatives, which I'll just list. The first step is doing RPL, which is recognition of prior learning. We have the course curriculum for various around 15 job roles in the handloom sector. So through RPL program, the artisans' skills are. Is my voice audible? So for the RPL program, the skills are assessed, and those who qualify a certain criteria, they are given a certification. With that certification, of course, there is a life insurance and there is a home loan which is there, which is facilitated to the viewers. At the same time, there is an RPL plus bridge course. If there is a gap identified between where they should be and where they are, then we cover it through the bridge course. Then many of us are aware of fashion designers, but not many people are aware of textile designers. As Gautamji has said, if the thickness changes or GSM changes, how do you engineer the fabric? What is the count? What is the ends picks per inch? If the material changes, how do you deal with that? So we have a job role called textile designer, JCARD, where these skills are taught. And we have a CAD software which is built by Digital India Corporation. So that is an open source system. So the training on that is also given through this program. Then we also have one program which is called the Handloom Entrepreneur. Here the class 10 students, class 10 pass students are given 4 months of training. This is implemented through the Indian Institute of Handloom Technologies right now. And it's a 4-month course, and this is sponsored by Ministry of Textile for the category who cannot afford it. And there is a hand-holding even after 6 months after they complete the course. And then we have BWork category where 60% skills and 40% academic courses are blended. It is a multiple entry and exit system where the candidates after 10th plus 2, they can have a certificate after 6 months and exit, or they can continue, have a diploma after 1 year and exit, or continue, have an advanced diploma after 2 years and exit, or continue and have a BWork after 3 years. So this is the courses, skill courses are as per industry norms, and we have had over 95% placements. And we've also had some first generation entrepreneurs from weavers family who had left this particular profession and have come back, have created producer companies, have put their material, put their products on government e-marketing system, also on e-shelf mart. They have traveled to Delhi to exhibitions in Aga Khan Hall and Delhi Haat. And we have a very good feedback for this BWork course. In addition, we also have a class 10th certification for those who are in the profession, but somehow had to drop out for some reason or the other and are willing to come back. So here we have a few skill courses and a few academic courses, and the skill courses and the academic courses are in the field itself, like handloom weaver, hank dyer, entrepreneur, as Gautamji has rightly pointed out. So everything about portfolio making, communicating, all those things are taught. And one language, any regional language they have to do. So that class 10 certification is also there. These are the initiatives which we have done from Textile Sector Skill Council. And now we are focusing more on making it ergonomically more comfortable for the weavers, because the previous generations' aspirations were different and the current generations, new generations' aspirations are very different. So that how to make this more appealing to the new generation, we are working on making it ergonomically more comfortable and more aspirational. So that's all I have to put in right now. We can take up the question and answer sessions where people need more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swapna Mishra, for giving us a complete picture about, like you said, RPL and other programs and in skilling initiatives from the Textile Skill Council. So far, I think we have focused mostly on crafts, as in handlooms and textiles. But the other side of the crafts, which perhaps Mahatma Gandhi had in mind, included every skill that involved hands. It could be toy making, it could be crafts from leather or wood or any of the things which had a creative and an artisanal value to it, right? And now coming to the children, to schooling, to schools, often we see in our families there are small kids who try to create few things with their hand, and we feel that it's a very childish thing to do, and not many parents really encourage that. They say it's okay, you do this for time pass, but go and study. But perhaps that child could be the person who would be a game changer for the entire ecosystem which we are talking about. So let's have with us views from Dr. Mehrotra on how vocationalization of school education in the backdrop of NEP 2020 and the influence, Gandhian influence, is going to change what we are going to see in the next few years. Over to you, Dr. Mehrotra.
Namaskar and a very good morning. Thank you very much for this invitation to be here on this, I would say, auspicious occasion of celebration of our dear Mahatma Gandhi Ji, who is also known as Father of the Nation. I would like to start with his quote on which he has mentioned in his autobiography, My Experiments with Truth. He said, let every young man and woman be warned by my example and understand that good handwriting is necessary part of education. I am now of the opinion that children should first be taught the art of drawing before learning how to write. Now we need to really focus on the skills. This quote itself signifies the importance of learning skills. Because when we talk of communication skills, we say speaking, writing, listening. Now, when we say listening, it's a cognitive skill. So we need to focus on both cognitive as well as psychomotor skills. When we talk about three domains of learning, that is cognitive domain, psychomotor, and affective. This is what Gandhiji had said long back before we came to the Bloom's taxonomy of psychomotor and cognitive domain and affective domain. He talked about hand, heart, and head. Now, what we have done over the years that we've focused overwhelmingly on the head part rather than looking also at the hand aspect. So what we need to do is that we need to really think of the various aspects of it. Now, the first one is when we say head. Through head, children observe the world. They do logical thinking. With heart, they reach out to the world through emotions. And today, the emotional intelligence is becoming more important than your intelligence. The hands, using palm, fingers, and thumbs with responsibility. And working with hands is actually the secret of happiness. And it doesn't involve just the physical and mental effort, but also the emotions. Now, why I'm saying so is I'll give you one example of a massage therapist who apply pressure to the muscles and soft tissues of the human body to heal injuries, improve circulation, and also relieve the pain of the people. But he has or she has to do with emotions, and that is very important. Because he has to be very caring, because he is in the healthcare service. Now, I'll add to this another dimension, which is gut. And gut actually pertains to, if we talk biologically, it relates to gastrointestinal. But a healthy gut communicates with the brain through nerves and hormones, which actually help them to maintain the general health and wealth. This is a very important dimension that we need to take care of in 21st century, wherein stress is becoming very important. So everyone is going through the stress of work, of the pandemic, the effects of pandemic that we have. So like in communication, generally we used to say that you should have guts to do something, which means you should have the courage or conviction to do something. So this is another very important aspect. So besides the 3H that we talk about, we also need to look at this particular dimension of having guts to do something. And it also pertains to the entrepreneurship development. We need to prepare entrepreneurs rather than just the job seekers. And we have been talking about, our Honorable Prime Minister has also mentioned that we need to have job creators. And that is why we have so many programs now, startups and all those things. So we just don't have to look at that dimension of occupation-based vocational education training, but also preparing entrepreneurs through this. Now I'll come to another aspect of the 4 pillars of education, which has been said in the Nellis Commission way back in 1996. They have talked about 4 pillars of education. One is learning to know. The second is learning to do. The third is learning to be. And the fourth is learning to live together. So we have to teach our children not to be just individualistic, but how to work in teams. And that's another very important aspect of the education. And this is what the National Education Policy 2020 has talked about. So they have actually given us the direction of bringing about the necessary pedagogical shift from joyless or textbook-centric learning to fun-based and activity-based learning, from teacher-centered learning to student-centered learning, from part or subject-based teaching learning to holistic teaching learning. And that is why the NEP has talked about the multidisciplinarity in the education. The interdisciplinary courses need to be offered, and there should be no hard separation between the different curricular and co-curricular areas, as well as the academic stream and the vocational stream. Now I'll go back to what Mahatma Gandhi has actually talked about in terms of work-centered education. He gave the example of Takli, which is the first tool, I would say, because Dr. Shapna Mishra from Textile is sitting over there. I hope she'll agree that it was the first tool for weaving. And Gandhiji has actually given that example of doing productive work using that tool. And we need to also look at that aspect of what Gandhiji wanted to convey, that it's not just about learning the vocation, it is about work-centered education. Means learning various subjects. And this is what we are trying to bring in through the pre-vocational education from grade 6 to 8. And also the 10 backless days that the National Education Policy has given us the direction that we need to introduce 10 backless days, internship programs, Lok Vidya. These are the things that we can introduce by introducing craft education. And that is what the vocational pedagogies. Shardaji has talked about art and science of teaching or pedagogy. I would like to add craft here, because when we say vocational pedagogy, it is art, science, and craft of teaching. And we have to ensure that every learner who is going through this kind of holistic education should be able to learn not just the art and science, but also the craft of anything that they are doing in school or outside the school. So the policy has actually targeted that by 2025, at least 50% of learners through the school and higher education system shall have exposure to vocational education. and for which we need to have a clear action plan with targets and timelines. And this has been done in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goal, which is the Agenda for 4.0, and which has two targets, Target 4.3 and Target 4.4, which talks about the vocational education and training. So ensuring that every women and men should have affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, which includes the university. So in order to achieve the target, we need to integrate academic education with vocational education across all the institutions so that every child gets an opportunity for lifelong learning and develop skills through flexibility in courses. So I would just like to say this thing at this point of time. We'll have more discussions. I suppose I have finished my talk in time. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Mehrotra. Thank you so much. Thank you for presenting the view from the school level education perspective, vocational education perspective. We'll come back to you with few questions that my team has already researched on. Now we'll move on to getting a grassroots level experience, mainly, from the women who are into handlooms and learning the craft and need to be upskilled. And like Mr. Sharda was saying, like Dr. Swapna was saying, connecting them with the markets, connecting them with the new kind of knowledge that is needed to not just survive, but thrive and grow. So let's hear it from Ms. Jonali, what she has to say about her experience and her views on skilling and upskilling.
Thank you so much, Madhuri, for this invitation to take part in this esteemed panel. And wishes on Gandhi Jayanti to all of you on the panel, my esteemed co-panelists. I would start with a quote of Mahatma Gandhi when he visited Assam in 1941. He said, "Assamese women weave dreams on cloth." So I think that's a perfect way to start this short sharing that I have. Well, I think it applies not just to Assamese women, but also to women across the country who really express with their heart. And the title of this discussion is so apt because we believe at the core of our work is the heart, and which is why the name of our organization is here, which means heart in Sanskrit, and the name of our foundation is Heart Crafted Foundation, because we believe that in addition to the head and the hand, which are always there, the heart really drives the innovation, the workmanship, the emotional reach with the customers, and thereby the all the good things that come out of it. And based on this philosophy, we have the model in which we had created our work was around 3 Ps. So I'm a management student, and therefore, I like to sum everything in Ps or Ls, etc. So this is 3 Ps. And early on in 2013, when we started our work, and really, I believe, tried to understand what is it that ails Indian women and their shot at getting their share of fame in this world of handlooms and handicrafts. Because so far, if I may say so, most of the artisans, most of the weavers and other makers of handcrafted products, mostly the fame and glory have been earned by the men, folk, which is fine. But it's also, as in everything else, as in every other sector in the world, the handloom and handicraft sector also demands, or rather should have, equal participation of and equal sharing of the recognition and fame of the women. So with this, we had created the 3P model, which was product, people, and pride. So product, when we started, this work in Northeast, and why we chose Northeast, as many of you would know, that Northeast boasts of the highest number of women artisans. Every woman, because of cultural reasons, has to weave on their looms, whether it's a frame loom, jwala loom, loin loom, or any other kind of loom. It is almost customary to weave your own cloth, wear it, for your, marriage, and even have new cloth woven for the arrival of your child. And, as the whole cycle of life continues, even have one prepared for your death. So this is the kind of extreme, attachment and emotional attachment to weaving. And I'm speaking particularly of weaving here. So which is why we thought that we must focus on the product. And if we need to reach to the world, we need to have a product that connects with everyone. And which is why we thought we should make products which it's not just the local people are wearing, which is, as Mr. Gautam has also referred to earlier, market moves beyond the local market. So this was one of our goals. And that's why we tried creating or have created sari genres so far. And we believe that this will be a way forward for all clusters that we are working in. So this is product. Second is people. So people means two. One is customers and one is the craftspeople. So we focus on extreme, care for the customer segment and respect for the customers in what they want, at what price points they would like, and the quality they would like, the communication they would like, etc., and for the craftspeople. And this really encapsulates the entire model of how we support the craftspeople. And I'll come to that later. And the third, which is very important, is pride. So we have seen in our work over the years that in certain clusters, which are a little more developed than the others, like in Hualkusi, which is a weaving village in Assam, the people have moved away from weaving, although that's the only commercialized cluster. But it's quite surprising that people want to move away from that for other lucrative professions. And that's not the story of Assam alone, it's across India. So how can we build pride? And we focus on this a lot because we have instituted a recognition program, an annual program, along with a lot of other, periodicities through the year. So this is how we have addressed some of the challenges. And one of our main focus areas, like I've said, is gender equality, along with so many other sustainable development goals that we strive to attain. And this is the reason why we feel that women need to be given training, in addition to mentoring. So we have a 7L framework for this entire development, which I referred to a little while earlier. And that is, first is the market access, or otherwise you can call the forward linkage, the entire supply chain, which is the backward linkage, connecting the entire ecosystem of raw materials, finishers, and and everything that comes into the weaving process. The third is the skill development itself. So women know how to weave, but they need to be given certain skills to upgrade. For example, women in Assam, in certain communities, because it's a very community-driven weaving, did not know how to do extra warp weaving on borders of saris. For example, the one that I'm wearing, it has been developed after 3 years of continuous development and training as to how to do extra warp borders on a sari. And which is why I have decided, I thought I'd wear this, because this is really the first one of that entire skill development that happened, and along with so many other training topics. And other kind of training that women need, or rather, I would say, continuous coaching and mentoring. And that is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, that never give up on a woman. She has, her whole lot on her plate. She looks after the house, she tends to the fields, she goes for sowing the crop and harvesting, and in between she finds the time to weave. And we have worked out this arrangement where women can work about 4 to 5 hours every day, and we build enough buffer into our timelines. So this is the whole aspect of training. Then we also provide access, financial access, giving them access to money for working capital and other requirements. And then not to forget the very important aspect of recognition, which I have already alluded to earlier. So these are some of the things that we have done so far. And what we feel good about is that what we saw as a crying need is also being taken up, because one of the biggest lacks was that of lack of a cluster. So we work in 2 clusters in Assam, and we also work in Karnataka. So in Assam, we work in the Kamrup and Jorhat clusters that covers about 6 communities, which I mean by linguistic communities. And all of them have different weaving styles. We have different sari genres that we believe will pave the way for a sari product to come out of Assam. So these are my thoughts. And just about NEP, since you asked that, one of the recommendations I've seen in the NEP is that it would invite famed artists and craftspeople from the clusters to address people and to address students. And I think that would be so good. I mean, I think that's just what we need. I mean, I think these people have the kind of abilities that I can never, ever dream of having, working with something and making things as beautiful as this. And, it's about time that we gave them that stage and that recognition that, yes, it is your, work and you need to share about it. I'm also happy that my own daughter, has availed of art and music in her school, in her 11th class, and which I believe is a great benefit that we've already availed. And I think, that's how I feel this NEP will really bring about the changes on both the sides. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonali. I think a topic like this, we can really go on discussing and coming up with many action points that can be implemented across the country, because all of us believe that many things are happening for the first time thanks to NEP 2020 when we talk about craft-centric education and skills. Now coming back to the theme of this webinar, we wanted to connect craft-centric education with 21st century skills. By 21st century skills, I just want to highlight few of them. I'm sure most of our audience are also familiar. To survive in the 21st century at the workplace or even as a good human being, we need many skills like creativity, critical thinking, empathy, resilience, and so many of them. So somehow we at NSN, the entire team believes that Gandhiji's idea of craft-centric education had inside it had these seeds of indirectly inculcating these skills. So now let's ask our panelists how all these craft-centric ideas, which can translate into curriculum, not just handlooms and textiles, but also, as I said earlier, it could be any craft. And I'm sure all our panelists can also reflect on some of those crafts as well, which could be pottery, which could be leather, which could be wood, or any of these things, or even jewelry. And in fact, if you are familiar with the QP-NOS, the qualification packs and national occupation standards developed by Handicraft and Carpet Sector Skill Council, you would have seen that they have already put up a list of QP-NOS at the school level, which I think is now going to be taken up by CBSE. So already few steps are in the right direction, and we are going to see those changes happening. Perhaps Dr. Mishra can also tell us about, from the textile sector, what is the view of, bringing in these QP-NOS and, starting young at the school level. And also Dr. and Dr. Mehrotra can perhaps reflect on this. So now let's go ahead and request our panelists, starting with Mr. Sharda Gautam, about maybe 2 or 3 key action points which can help us in translating the policy level ideas into action at the school level or the college level or even at the research level. We hardly think about vocational high-level research like a PhD in vocational related disciplines. I think India has to really now take up these issues as well. So let's hear it from Mr. Sharda Gautam now.
Right. So, Madhuri, I think in my view, what is very much important, let's say if you look at next 3 to 5 years time frame, I would restrict my suggestions at the primary and the upper primary level. If we look at, as I mentioned earlier, that the kind of education system that we have at the moment looks at providing same kind of education to anyone who has an inclination to take up whether engineering, medicine, crafts, or anything else. So now what's very important is that education system right at the primary level should start infusing different aspects of careers that may come in. So in general, in Indian society, we tend to look at engineering, medicine being a bureaucrat or professions like this with greater degree of glamour and glitter. I think what's very important is that we start providing recognition to the so-called vocational and informal sectors as a part of the formal economy. If we look at the larger, I think, employment framework, what we loosely call as informal or not so organized sector is the one that has been providing the largest employment to the people. Unfortunately, we have not been able to document the significance of that towards the national economy as a whole. So what's very important as a first level suggestion is that within the primary level education, and I think Mr. Malhotra would also agree that what Mahatma Gandhi's Talim also reflected was towards inducing the practical aspects of the education. Let's say, for example, if children are learning mathematics, English, one of the regional languages, Hindi, and certain elements related to environment, why not to introduce something which is connected with the crafts of the country? So artisans' children would also tend to appreciate and connect with the education that they would be receiving in their villages or in their districts. Say, for example, how do you do spinning? How do you do weaving? How do you make a pot using clay and mud? How do you do carpentry? If we are able to introduce those practical aspects of the vocational education that we have often been calling as, that would enhance the cognitive skills, what Mr. Malhotra also talked about, of the children in general. And depending upon their interest and excitement related to what they gain out of the education at the primary level, children would be more informed in deciding which route they would like to take up. It is not necessary that only an artisan's child has to be an artisan. Someone else can also take up weaving, someone else can also take up pottery and evolve. The basic gap which exists is they are not exposed to doing that. They only learn maybe about that a potter makes pots and a carpenter makes doors or wood carvings. They do not experiment that on their own. Once they start learning about that, that would not just enhance their cognitive learning abilities, but would also expose them to what other possibilities exist, which because of the regular education that we have, we may be suppressing. So I think that's the key suggestion that I have for the national education policy implementation.
Thank you, Mr. Gautam. I would also like to inform the panelists and also whoever is watching live now. From NSN, we are going to document all this. In fact, this is not just a webinar for us. We look at this as a catalyst to carry on few more discussions and come up with more action points as we go ahead and speak to the experts and people who are connected with the craft sector. So this is just the first one which we thought we will start with today. Please look forward to more such things and also come up with more suggestions. Now I would request Dr. Swapna Mishra to share her views. But before that, let us also revisit the importance of textile and weaving. As the speakers have already said, weaving has an emotional connect and it is highly symbolic. As we talk about in Hindi, we say Tana Bana or the warp and the weft. It connects with life. And if you look at pottery, for example, pottery is always connected with molding someone. You have Sant Kabir writing about weaving. So you see there is a huge heritage about weaving. Let's now ask Dr. Mishra to tell us more about this important skill and what it has to tell us about 21st century skills.
Thank you, ma'am. So as I have told already that we have already designed courses which offer a candidate who's dropped out of school to do class 10th through National Institute of Open Schooling without doing the conventional maths, English, Hindi, and other things. Out of 5 subjects, 4 subjects are related to handloom, that is designing, weaving, dyeing, printing, entrepreneurship, and any regional language they can take. So the next step is, of course, the curriculum is also there, the books are also there, but more and more people are not aware. So through Mr. Gautam, Mr. Malhotra, and Ms. Jonali, I would like to invite more people to, motivate and to let people who dropped out of school education or who have the skill but need the soft skill part, like emotional intelligence, communication, so they can, marketing skills, so they can blend in and get the certification. That is one step. Second is through BVOC, we are doing the getting the new generation into the weaving. As Ms. Jonali has said, that she has introduced WAP warp floated fabrics, which are not there. So we've also done a few innovations and brought them to the various exhibitions, online, B2B, international exhibitions, where they get to know actually what the customer requires. So far, all the curriculum is made more towards focusing on the adult learning, bringing the already people who already have the craft, and get that gap which is there, for making them self-reliant. There is a need to reframe the, I would not say the curriculum, but how you teach them in terms of the handbooks which are there. For a kids centric or a 9th to 12th or 6th to 12th kind of restructuring of curriculum is required. I think that is one thing. Also, the coming together of, like, all four of us are doing good work in different arenas. So coming together of all four towards the enhancement of the craft and also upliftment of the craftsmen, and making it more aspirational for the younger generation is what is needed. That is what is my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swapna Mishra, for sharing your action points. We will definitely make a note of them. Before I request Dr. Mehrotra, I would just like to show you this book by Jasleen Dhamija. Books like this, I think, introduce us to crafts. And if such books are, made popular among children, maybe digital copies of chapters from this book, I think this played a very important role, at least in my life, to learn more, because I do have a personal interest, and I really would always wanted to try out things. And when we try out things as children, as I was saying earlier, we have a sense of pride, which you were talking about, which Jonali was talking about. The sense of pride which comes when you either cook with your hand or do something with your hand is it's simply so very valuable. I think that sense of pride should come in the curricular changes that are going to come up with NEP 2020. So Dr. Mehrotra, what are the changes you would suggest? What are the action points?
Thank you, Dr. Madhuri ji. I think you started very rightly in saying that we need to look at the 21st century skills, because we have been doing this craft education, vocational education training, vocationalization of education for so many years. But we need to really introspect where we have gone wrong, or what are the issues that we need to address. And the first important thing, which Jonali ji has also rightly said, that if these craftspersons or people who are working in the world of work in different occupations are given the opportunity to come in schools as teachers or trainers, then the whole scenario will change, because they'll be part of our education system, and they would actually make the difference, which we have not been able to make for so many years. Now, for this, we have to have a two-pronged strategy. One is we have to do the recognition of prior learning, which Dr. Swapna Mishra has already talked about, and other sector skill councils are also doing that. So we need to first recognize the competencies of the people who are there in the world of work and give them due recognition. The second strategy that we need to take up is provide them occupation-based or NOS-based training, that is National Occupation Standards that we have. So based on that, we should train these people not only on the vocational skills, but also vocational pedagogy, so that when they enter into the school, they can prove themselves as effective trainers. If we just focus on the vocational skills, then it's not going to serve the purpose, because the world is changing. We are into globalization. There are standards that we need to follow and serve the people with those standards, provide quality service. And that can happen only when we train these people who are in the world of work on those standards. And when they enter into the school, they develop those kind of standards among our students. So we don't just want that the people working in the unorganized sector should train just like that. but they should provide or impart those skills which are practical in aspects, but the cognitive skills that what I was talking about, you need good teachers or trainers for that. Those who understand the concept of critical thinking, logical reasoning, analytical skills, and all those things, we need to teach them so that when they get into the schools or colleges, they are able to serve the purpose of this whole change that we are trying to bring in through the National Education Policy 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mehrotra, for sharing the action points which you just mentioned. I think one of the important points which perhaps Jonali can also reflect for entrepreneurship, the informal sector entrepreneurships, because this is still unorganized and informal. Is there a scope for that? And how do we connect, like all of you were talking about, bringing the crafts people, the senior craftsmen or craftswomen, the artisans, and making them like the instructors, giving them an opportunity to connect with the students. So if there is a way that can be done, maybe you can reflect on that and share your other ideas as well, which could be important action points.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just talk about the point regarding my entrepreneurship. So, like we all know, India now has, and rightfully so, various pockets of micro entrepreneurship, or rather potential for micro entrepreneurship that can brew. It is, I mean, the handloom and handicraft sector alone is a few $1 billion, market opportunity, and also because of the the lessons that COVID has given us, pandemic has taught us, which we alluded to earlier, that we feel self-expressed and take pride when we do something with our own hands. If we recall watching Olympics just a couple of a month ago, rather, Tom Haley was actually knitting something as he was watching, the Olympic sports. I mean, he's a gold medal swimmer, and the entire world was lauding, right, that it's such a great performer, such an Olympian gold medalist, and still he had found time to knit. So I think there is certainly, I mean, if a champion can show the way, there is some merit in it. So I feel now, along with that, I think that is given that it is important. Now, how to make it a revenue earning, income earning opportunity for life? I think that's a next crucial question. If we really look at the education sector, why did we come to, only signifying or associating success with engineers, doctors, and IAS officers, or maybe a few more others, is because at that time we only had those professions that earned the most amount of money and prestige. But if we can accord the same to other industries, and now of course in the last 20 years many more industries, many more professions have also come up, like graphic illustrators, dance teachers, yoga instructors, etc. So I feel now, yes, I mean, some of us are also doing this to connect and understand and open up opportunities for craftspeople and artisans. But what if we could enable them to do it? Like they say, you can teach a man to fish, and he will earn for a lifetime. So that's a whole objective of entrepreneurship. So my 2 cents on this would be that if we can introduce along with the craft-based education, because it has to also pave way for a future employment or entrepreneurship. 2 things. One is that if we can start with some kind of a student internship, even beginning with high school, not only in the fashion institute level, at the high school, at the higher secondary levels, if children have a requirement in the curriculum to intern with a craft organization or a craft cluster, and be able to share the experiences. And second, if we introduce some elements of entrepreneurship in the school curriculum itself, from the school level itself, because now children are exposed to the entire digital world like never before. It's not like only a few of us only understand entrepreneurship. I mean, they understand probably more than we do. So how to really take the opportunities in the market, how to blend it with what how to connect various dots and really carve out an income, a livelihood. I mean, I'm talking even for let's say my daughter. Would I like her to go into this profession? yes, why not? If she can feel self-expressed, if she can earn her living, I do not mind. So we, the people who have come out of the formal education, also has to answer, is it that something we would like? And if yes, then what we would like for the changes. So these are my 2 cents on what my I think the recommendations could be included.
Thank you, Jonali. I think one very interesting point is at least 2 or 3 times you have reflected as a parent. And I think parents are the people who have a great influence on their children. And it's very nice to hear that you are allowing your daughter to pursue her dreams. And I think if this is something that can be achieved in many Indian families, the entire scenario is going to change when we are talking about doing what one loves to do. So in this, with this backdrop of the points that we have collected from our panelists, as I also mentioned earlier, we are going to document this on our website and also circulate it and share it from our e-magazine, which we always do. But besides this, I have few closing remarks before we say goodbye to all the panelists. I think one of the important points which we noticed from NSN, Team NSN, since we have already reflected on the policy last year and done few discussions around it and facilitated few discussions. When it comes to crafts, I think the craft cluster, the idea of a craft cluster, what they do, where are these clusters, I think this information is lacking in many people. So we perhaps have to do that. And a second important thing which we observed was the idea of ODOP, one district, one product scheme from the government of India has huge scope to build in the craft centric curriculum and, the practical part of it. I mean, because when we talk about crafts, it's practice, it's not theory so much, right? So that was one. And third important point, observation which we had was organizations like KVIC, that is Khadi and Village, industries and corporation, and many other such corporations can be rejuvenated with by infusing a lot of young blood and perhaps with more internships, or I don't know, there are many things which can be done if we think out of the box. So with all the points that you shared, as I said, we are going to put them all together. If there's anything else you can probably share now, but before that I would also like to look at some of the comments which we got on our YouTube live, which we are doing right now. Not so much in terms of questions, but there are observations about the role the Sector Skill Council can play in a big way. And also e-charkha, I'm not very familiar with this, but perhaps if you're familiar, one of the persons, Vishwanath, says it's an excellent machine already available. And also there are few points about, the details about skilling in this domain and how skilling can change the life of the artisans. So it's good to see that people have shared few points here, because this is not a very familiar domain. By the way, as you know, I think this is one of the first sessions that we are conducting on crafts, but then we see good traction. So that's a very positive sign. So if you wish to share any more points, please go ahead before we close in the next 2 minutes. Yeah.
I think the e-charkha, what he's talking about is that while you are spinning, you generate electricity through it.
Okay.
And these are the concepts that what we need to promote in terms of linking hand, heart, and the head. So this is actually we need to bring about it in our schools in terms of innovations. See, we have been promoting science, art, social science, history in isolation. I would give an example. If we are teaching in automotive sector, if we start with the wheel, children will learn about how wheel was invented, who were the people who got involved, how it became so robust in terms of over the years that we don't have to even fill air into that. And now there are innovations in terms of tires. Now we talk about those tires innovations. So children will get curious of how they can also do innovation. So this is the kind of spirit or kindling that kind of light. I would also say e-light that we need, because now we are in terms of e-learning, online learning, online talking, online chatting, online, everything is going online. So we need to think of all those innovations that is there already in the world of work and how it evolved over the years. We need to teach our children the evolution of everything that we have around the world. Then they will become curious. And that is what the Dallas Commission report titled, Learning the Treasure Within. It's the treasure that is already there in every child. We just have to help them to find that treasure rather than just dumping a lot of information into their head. What we have talked about, the harms of the rote learning or putting a lot of information into the head of them. So we need to really think in that terms and promote more of innovation, creativity. Handicraft can bring in a lot of creativity in our schools, which have died because of this bookish knowledge that we have been providing over things. The moment we talk of syllabus, every teacher thinks that they have to complete the syllabus. It's not just completing the syllabus, but it's about ensuring that every child learns through that syllabus. So those mindset have to be changed, and parents can, as Jonali ji has rightly said, the parents have to take this initiative. Charity begins at home. We need to start from home and take it to the school and colleges and to the world of work. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It's been a great forum. I've been getting all messages from NSN, National Skills Network, that Dr. Madhuri ji is providing that kind of leadership. And it's been a great opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, there was a small disruption at my end. If any panelists would like to.
So, ma'am, I would like to request everybody on the panel as well as whoever is watching to look at the national occupational standards and qualification packs which are developed by Textile Sector Skill Council, and then connect to us in what way we can collaborate and take it forward. We would be really keen to participate, including the e-charkha, solar charkha, curriculum development, involvement of students. So we are working with CBSE, BVOC, I already told you we are doing. So I feel not many people are aware of the National Occupation Standards, QPs, and how to implement them. So we would invite everybody to see that and then get in touch with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, in case we don't have any other new points to share, I would again profusely thank all of you for joining us this morning at a very short notice. And I look forward to, host you once again individually, starting with Mr. Sharda Gautam to learn more about your initiatives, because I think we need to take this a little bit deeper. Today was just the catalyst, as I said, for the future discussions. Thank you so much. And I also wish to thank my team, who has been at the back of you, who have been watching us live on YouTube. We look forward to be connected with you. And thanks once again. Goodbye.